Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Arkham Sessions. My name is Brian Ward. With me, as always, the psychologist to the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains of Gotham City and beyond. Everyone, welcome Dr. Andrea Letamendi. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, Brian.
It's nice to be back for a second week in a row.
Strange.
I know. It feels good. It feels like something we should make sure we're doing more often.
Back in the saddle.
That's right.
Speaking of saddles...
Let's talk about saddles.
I have no transition to this, except I want you to talk about the tribute to Adam West at LA City Hall.
The tribute to Adam West at LA City Hall. It was interesting. It was heartwarming to some. It was very touching to some and to many people. Basically what happened was Eric Garcetti, Los Angeles' mayor, and the chief of police, Beck, Charlie Beck, they, along with Burt Ward and K-Rock DJ extraordinaire Ralph Garman, and really good friend of Adam West, along with Adam's family, got together and they threw the bat symbol up onto Los Angeles City Hall.
The crowd was amazing.
The crowd was phenomenal.
I wouldn't say I was tearful, but my heart was full in the sense of seeing so many people come together in a very organized and safe way. There were a lot of people. I did have a moment of just a sense of, oh gosh, how safe is this? Is someone going to take this opportunity to enact violence or to scare people or whatever?
Yeah.
And I was very, very relieved. And again, I felt a sense of just a sense of happiness in a strange way. About how the city came together and did so to pay tribute to this wonderful person who passed away and kept it safe and kept it positive and found a way to honor the character, not just the character of this person, but the character of Batman that he really brought to life. So in a way, I was okay with it being a little bit more on the positive side. I know that you had wanted it to be a little bit more of a I don't know, a eulogy?
It's not that I wanted it to be a eulogy. I just wanted there to be some weight to the idea that we didn't have this man with us, and I didn't feel like it was given to us in quite that way. And I realized that of all the people and all the tributes I saw online, I am one of the few people that I saw who was there that night, who didn't necessarily get fulfilled or satisfied by the speeches that were given. To me, it seemed a little too playful. To me, it seemed like they were giving Adam a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where it was one big celebration. And, Burt Ward had some great things to say about his friend. And when you watch it cut down into like a 2-minute clip, this whole thing was amazing and tearful. When you watch the whole thing, Eric Garcetti's tribute speech was very playful. It didn't necessarily... And I think what bothered me was a number of people said the same thing, which is normally we would go to you, the citizens, for your help, but tonight we're calling on Batman. And that was a problem for me because we didn't have Batman that night. And that would be the one night that we would say Batman's not here.
Right. And we miss him, and here's what he was about, and
right.
Here's how we're going to continue his legacy.
Right.
So I do think there's a way to bring that into, I guess, the tone of the night. And you're right, they really didn't go in that direction. They were not really pointing out the loss of a person.
Yeah, to me, the throwing of the bat symbol up onto City Hall should have been a tearful moment, not a Comic-Con-esque, oh my God, let's all take selfies in front of it moment. Like that, it shouldn't have been that. And it was. It was a spectacle rather than a tribute. And I would have, more appreciated it. I think what sums it up best is the second speech of the night was our police chief, Charlie Beck. And his entire speech revolved around the fact that he was a real life police chief and he's never once thrown the bat signal out, but he's always wanted to. And tonight he was going to get a chance. And that to me is weird because that's like,
it's not about you.
Oh, thanks for dying.
Yeah.
Adam West, so that I can finally fulfill my childhood fantasy of turning on the bat signal. Like I thought tonally, it was weird. Now, granted, they only had a couple of days to put this thing together. I completely applaud them for that. And I thought that the heart was there. I thought that the intent was there. And for that, I'm really happy that you and I went.
I think it's also what you make of it. And the moment that the bat signal appeared at the very top of the, one of the tallest buildings in downtown LA, and I heard all of the cars in the surrounding streets just go wild with their horns and people were cheering, I wasn't really paying attention to the individuals trying to get selfies. I was just kind of taking in the moment of respecting this character and a person who, again, really brought a lot of life to this character and respect and its own, we can't say enough about what Adam West did for this character. So I think that it was bigger than just that moment. It was about the ability to celebrate something in a crowd of people that I knew shared some level of fandom. And I think, and that was meaningful and special. I don't know that we're ever really going to have a moment like that. You get that at Comic-Con. You get these moments where some movie unveils or some actor comes out or there's this big announcement, but you're all there for Comic-Con. This was our city.
Right.
So there was a sense of just feeling a little bit more connected. And that was really special.
I agree. So let's talk about our episode this week, shall we? Because it's a doozy.
Oh, no.
I know.
I don't even know. This one it's very bizarre. It's out there.
We had a lot of people on social media talking about this episode, Love is a Croc, and a lot of people sort of feel the same way, that there were lines crossed in the relationship between Baby Doll and Killer Croc, where it was not necessarily inappropriate lines, but that it's a very awkward relationship to watch.
Right.
And
factually, we should probably break it down. Factually, it doesn't cross lines. Factually, it is a story about two criminals, two villains who find something in common and team up and have this relationship that ultimately breaks down at the end. But I don't know, visually and contextually, just theoretically, it does not work. It just makes us uncomfortable. There's the awkwardness of this little, she looks like a little girl.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about her before. Baby Doll has a disease. It's a condition, not a disease.
That's right.
In which she ages, but her physical appearance remains as a young girl.
Yes.
And this has actually been adaptive for her. She was a TV star, so she was able to use it to her advantage, and for many years represented this cute little blonde youthful girl who was beloved by all. And then as she grew older, her body never changed,
right?
But her maturity changed. And in the last show where we really deconstructed this character, the tension or the conflict was that her outside appearance didn't match her inner personhood.
And it was a very sad ending to that episode. If you remember, she was in the funhouse mirrored room. Batman was there. He actually seems to console her a little bit at the end because he too knows what it means to be this freak that no one ever saw.
It's like they connected. Yeah. He extended it. I think that's the episode where we said we saw the most empathy from him.
That's the episode you said that. Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so let's talk about this episode because I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We start with, of course, a rerun of her television show, Love That Baby. And we see that Mary Louise Doll, who is Baby Doll, is working behind the counter at a motel, hotel. It's very almost Psycho-esque, where,
the movie.
Correct. She's got a very Norman Batesy. She is behind the counter. She is wearing a trench coat and some glasses. She has her hair up in a bun. She's trying to look very adult, and she sounds very adult. Interestingly, though, she does have her TV show on the television there. A couple walks in. Now, I want to talk about this couple just very briefly because this is surprising to me, given that we're watching a show ostensibly for children. This might be the first time that I can think of. Maybe I'm just not thinking of it properly, but the husband in this relationship is hammered. I mean,
they're both, that couple, they seem like they're dragging themselves back in from a night on the town.
Clearly, they've been enjoying themselves. She is sort of helping him along. He is embarrassing her. But this is a show that I wouldn't necessarily have thought they would explore drunken behavior. And this guy is plotzed out of his mind. So much so that by the end of the scene, Mary takes his head and slams it down into the sign-in book and slams the book on his head a couple of times. I mean, she goes violent because he recognizes her from the show and he won't let it go.
Well, I think that it's interesting in that Baby Doll wants recognition, has always been thirsty for that stardom, but I guess the comparison or the accusation, if you will, that she's childish and she's a child is the button you don't want to push with her.
Yeah. Well, and we have some audio of those buttons being pressed.
Push the button.
Yeah, you were Baby Doll. You got that disease.
It's a condition, not a disease. I don't grow.
Right. So you went nuts and tried to kill Batman.
Harry, that's enough.
See? She's Baby Doll. Come on, baby. Do something funny.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Drea, I want to talk a little bit about where we last saw Mary Louise Doll versus now. She's clearly trying to turn her life around. She has got a straight job. She is trying to stay out of the spotlight. She is not trying to go into crime. She is reformed to some degree. She seems to be successfully running a motel or hotel, at least, you know,
right. She's
night,
employed.
she's a night manager of some kind. You know, I don't know how successful she's been at this. It's the first time we've seen her.
Right. I think I know where you're going with this. what are the indicators of success, or what are the indicators of recovery? So she has a job. So she's making an income. So we see that she's taking care of herself.
Yeah.
She's well dressed. Her hygiene's good. What I think is important to also note is, so she's functioning at some level, but there are other areas of her life that could indicate that she's not well.
So let's talk about those areas of her life.
Well, one area that concerns me is the quick reaction, the response to her customers, and
she's pretty patient in the beginning.
She is. I think that there's effort. She's effortful, and I think that her level of aggression and her willingness to be violent and her, the physical altercation is indicative of some, mismanagement of her emotions. She got very angry, and she's angry because she sees this as an attack, or she sees this as an insult, and she's not able to manage those feelings. What does that bring up for her? Is she shameful? Is she hurt? We've talked about primary and secondary emotions before. I imagine her first set of emotions have to do with being hurt, with being in pain. And her reaction is to lash out, to be angry, to be aggressive. And she hurts other people.
Yeah, and she's very angry about one thing in particular, or hurt over one thing in particular. Let's take a listen to this line.
Why don't they ever understand? I'm not a baby. I'm not a child. I'm just different.
So I think that it's hard. It's hard because she can't change her external appearance. She has this condition, right? I think that what she hasn't done yet is worked on reconciling that chasm or the discord. So she knows that people are going to perceive her a certain way, especially because she was on this show that everybody knows about.
Right.
And so she hasn't worked through those demons. She hasn't worked through those feelings. And I think we talked about on the last show where we really talked about her character. She has a lot of work to do when it comes to accepting who she is, and maybe working on and developing some things in her life that she would feel proud of today, that she would feel is validating, that she gets some reward out of.
Okay, so you're going into answering a question that a fan asked on Twitter. Let's go ahead and ask that question because I think it's an important one. At Teacher J. Lars asks, how does Baby Doll's inability to meet her basic needs because of her condition affect her, and what could she do to change her situation?
That's a great question. One thing that I don't see being met, and this is really, really essential for this episode, is interpersonal bonding and social support. So how is she getting that in her life? In the beginning of this episode, we don't get a lot of context, but our understanding is that she's alone. She lives alone. She works alone. She's found an occupation that is pretty distancing. She does work with other people, but
maybe we saw her as basically a nighttime manager at a motel, so we don't know how many people she actually works with.
Right. With that little bit of information, we could assume, and we get some information later when she's at home by herself, watching the news, and we're introduced to Killer Croc that way, which we'll definitely get into. There's definitely some unmet needs, and those are fundamental to our well-being, specifically social support, having strong social bonds, being able to rely on other people to help us to manage our own emotions. So when we get upset, when our feelings are hurt, when we're at work and some dude comes in drunk and makes us mad, we don't have to smack his head into the desk.
Right.
We can tolerate it. We can maybe do some deep breathing. And then what do? We go home and we tell our significant other about it, or we call up a friend, or we go on social media and say something. There are different ways in which we cope, but a lot of those different strategies rely on other people to be there for us. And I don't see that for Baby Doll.
Let me ask about that, because the last thing that we saw in the last episode with her was Batman be, as you said, the most empathetic he's ever been, in your opinion. And yet, she's still this way. Is it possible, could Batman be not necessarily held responsible, but could we expect him to maybe try to put an effort in to relate to Baby Doll to make sure she stays on the right path? We've seen him do that with Harley. We've seen him sort of try to do that with Two-Face,
right,
with Harvey. Do you have to have an H in the beginning of your name and a Y at the end in order for him to relate to you? Like, is that what's going on?
Well, what would you want him to do?
Well, clearly,
how do we know he didn't set this job up for her?
He very well may have.
He probably owns that building.
This sort of goes into the whole thing that we've discussed before, where I sort of felt like Bruce Wayne is more valuable as a philanthropist, as someone who can help people in a social environment and in public. Bruce Wayne could have helped her publicly, and yet Batman clearly did not. While she's trying to maintain a job, she is almost disguised. She is standing on top of a chair in order to look tall. She is wearing a trench coat in order to hide the fact that she is a small person. She is wearing the glasses and her hair differently. To me, Batman maybe could have taken this a few steps further in order to see to it that she would continue down the proper path. I could be wrong, because there is information we don't have.
Right.
But, that's my take on it.
And we should see Baby Doll in this current stage as making some, I would say, she's made some efforts, and she's demonstrating that she's changed in some ways. Up till now, we know that she's capable of far worse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are terrible things she could have done to this couple, and I'm not saying that what she did was okay. I think that we're meeting people where they're at, and she is doing the best that she can. So
with the understanding that she's not there yet, would you say the answer to our listener's question is that she is getting there? She is doing what she needs to do in order to meet those needs.
Right. And I would even say, as this episode unfolds, I would support what she's doing, because she discovers Killer Croc. And I think you should explain how that happens.
Well, immediately after her experience with this couple, she goes back to her room and she turns on the television. She turns on the news, and we see that it's not even really the news necessarily. It's basically a live trial that's happening. And to me, in Los Angeles, we have this almost daily occurrence where whatever's on TV flips over to live coverage of a police chase of some kind. And I imagine that in Gotham City, whatever's on TV just flips over to live coverage of some competency hearing for some arch villain. Because in this case, it's not even a trial. It's just a competency hearing trying to determine if Killer Croc is competent enough to stand trial. And they agree that he is not crazy. He is not legally insane.
Well, let me just make one clarification about a competency hearing.
Okay.
Because this has come up in the past, but not quite to this degree, or not quite in this scenario. A person is considered mentally incompetent to stand trial if he or she is unable to understand the character and consequences of the proceedings against him or her, or is unable to properly assist themselves in their own defense. That's different than a mental state. That's different than competency related to your state when you were committing the crime. So incompetency in this context is not a defense. Competency to stand trial is legally unrelated to the defendant's mental state at the time of the alleged crime.
Right.
In other words, the issue of competency relates to the defendant's state of mind during criminal proceedings.
So at this
not
moment,
during the commission of the crime.
At this moment, he's competent to stand trial. Okay, that's a great clarification.
And it's interesting. This scene, and I think we should play a brief clip of what he says about himself.
Yeah.
Say what you will about the bizarre nature of this episode and the romantic pairing between Killer Croc and Baby Doll, and how uncomfortable we are with that. Like, say what you will about that. But the things that are said throughout this episode are very compelling and important. And Killer Croc says a few things about himself and how he is treated by society. And I think that it has a lot of gravity. And so I just want you to play some of that.
Let's play it.
Have you anything to say before I pass judgment?
Yeah. I'm a victim of prejudice. Look at me. Nobody understands how rough my life's been. Just 'cause I'm different.
Everything that he's saying is true, by the way. We
Right.
don't disagree with him. These are things that we have said since we first met him on Batman the Animated Series.
And we don't know what crime has led him to. I mean, he's done a number of things, but we don't know what he could potentially be on trial for.
Right.
In this instance. What we know is that, and this is actually really compelling to me, this is what's common between someone like Baby Doll and someone like Killer Croc, who otherwise would not be very similar. But this is what is similar about them. They're both underestimated. They're both treated very poorly by society. Baby Doll is treated like a child and therefore is talked down to. Killer Croc, because of his appearance, is treated like an animal, therefore talked down to. Therefore, their experience is they are not human, or they're not treated with humanity. And so that, I think, is what aligns them. That is kind of the common element between them.
I do want to ask you about that because we find out a moment later when Baby Doll goes to visit Killer Croc in his cell. Oddly enough, in Arkham Asylum, not at Stonegate, where you would think that he's being held, given that he was competent at the time of the crime. He's competent at the time of the hearing. He is not insane. Therefore, you would think he would be at the penitentiary, but he's at Arkham.
Well, maybe he's at Arkham because what happened after the competency hearing is that he broke out of there and had a brawl with Batman, and maybe that interaction led to them putting him into Arkham.
Yeah, maybe. I would still think that's more of a criminal act. We do know, though, that he is going to be, or expects to be, sentenced to death the next day.
Too bad we didn't meet sooner, babe. They're sending me up the river tomorrow night. My number's up. I
have to ask, do you think that the sentencing, the judge or whomever is taking care of the sentencing in this trial, do you think that they view him as a person, or do you think they view him as an animal? I ask this for very good reason. If a dog goes and mauls a person on the street, that dog might be put down.
Right.
Like they might decide this animal needs to be killed.
Right. Right.
So she visits him and tells him that he shouldn't lose hope. She has plans. We then see her revert back to the same sort of scheme that she used in the last episode we saw her, where she is a small girl with a ball. She is nearly hit by a car. And in this particular case, the car is the vehicle that is escorting Killer Croc to the penitentiary. And it flips over. She manages to take out the two guards, and now she and Croc are together. She begins planning their heists, but he is not giving her the emotional satisfaction that she requires. She thinks that the two of them are kindred spirits. He doesn't necessarily seem to care about her one way or the other. He doesn't see her, to him, she's just another person.
Right.
Who clearly is looking at him a certain way.
Well, I think that he sees value in her. This is a mutually beneficial relationship.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
To some degree,
they
yes.
are living together in the sewers. So
she moved in with him.
I'm not quite sure. I guess it makes for a good setting for headquarters, and
he needs to be there.
That's true. He requires that kind of setting for whatever his physical needs are.
Right.
Now, this gets into an interesting, speaking of physical needs, this gets into a really interesting conversation because yes, he relies on her wit, or I guess her intellectual qualities and skills to design and strategize for these heists that they go on. The aim seems to be around stealing money, and the secondary gain for them is the headlines or the recognition in Gotham City. So they're collecting the newspapers. There's a joke about the Daily Planet and how clearly they're being recognized pretty broadly across the nation for their criminal heists. And so he benefits because she's the smart one, and it's like the brain and the brawn, right?
Sure.
She, now as you're mentioning, she benefits because of the interpersonal loyalty, some amount of social support, some amount of validation, some amount of having a person there. But she needs more from him. She gets upset when he tries to leave. She becomes very, I don't like to say the word clingy, but she is physically clings onto his legs.
Well, let me ask about this, because this is where I think the episode has a lot of layers. Obviously, she wants to be taken seriously as someone who is not a child. However, from the moment she breaks him out she has gone into her cute baby mode.
Right.
She insists she's not a baby, and yet she doesn't play up her maturity anymore. She is straight up. And part of me thinks, and forgive me if I put on my psychologist hat a little bit, part of me thinks that is the mode in which people like her.
Yeah.
From the sitcom. So she puts it on in order to get Killer Croc to like her.
Yeah, of course.
By doing that, she is putting on the mask. She's not showing him who she is. And now she is completely false. What's interesting is he wants to be seen as a person, not as an animal. And yet he reverts to the animal qualities of himself, the brute, the uncaring. He doesn't necessarily care about her. So the two of them, neither one of them are necessarily showing the other who they really are.
Right.
And that could be why this relationship doesn't work out. That and the fact that she was kind of a weird stalker and he didn't know anything about her or care about her anyway.
I mean, I think, well, it's interesting, and I totally agree with what you're saying. He becomes, I mean, he has the capacity to be aggressive, but we see him raise a hand to her and get very mean, and he yells at her.
Yeah, a couple people online, and we said this too right after the episode, and I think it bears bringing up. A couple people online said, at what point did they decide to take over the relationship between the Joker and Harley?
Yeah. There are some very common elements there where you're uncomfortable watching the cohabitation of two people that are constantly in conflict, and you see that there's that tension and there's that anger. And I think that you'd probably say the same thing for Harley and Joker. That's another episode. That's a different conversation. But for these two, I agree with you that they're not their authentic selves, but they still have these unmet needs. And their unmet needs are actually very similar. I want you to see me as a person, a whole person, a real person, not an animal, not a child. I want you to treat me as such.
Yeah.
I want the things that other people have. I want a caring, compassionate relationship. They're going about it very differently, like you mentioned. Baby Doll is trying to use what has always worked for her in the past, which is the cutesy, youthful,
the antithesis of what she wants people to see.
Right. And of course, Killer Croc doesn't know more. I want to say like Killer Croc reverts to his aggression and his avoidance. And that's really, really apparent here. When he gets upset, when he feels emotions that he can't manage, his strategy, his go-to response is avoidance. He doesn't know what to do with that. Most people would have a conversation, would work it out, would tell somebody, I feel hurt, or I feel I'm in pain, or I'm upset. He can't do that. He can't tolerate that. He doesn't know how. So no one's given him a chance. People don't want to sit down and have a conversation with him. People are scared of him. So his response out of self-preservation and to really try to distance himself or avoid more pain, he will go out into the city at night. And we learn that he's going to clubs and hooking up with ladies.
Yeah, so there's another point in which this episode is playing up some very adult themes. He has got two ladies on his arm. They are asking him about Baby Doll and whether, he needs to go back home to her. And he says that after a couple of more jobs, he's going to ditch her. Yeah. Baby Doll hears this, by the way, and, hell hath no fury like a baby doll scorned. But she then takes matters into her own hands and, makes him think that everything's cool and fine and dandy. Right. Except she decides that she is going to blow up Gotham City via a nuclear power plant overload. And when he says, okay, so then we're going to make them, pay up, she then says, no, we're going to die together and we're going to take Gotham City with us.
And that's the moment, I think, where we realize
Baby Doll cray.
Yeah, we are seeing these two people. We're seeing these two people struggle to find connection and understanding. And her solution is, I'm just going to blow up the world. I want to see the world blow up, and I'm going to
give
with
up.
It.
I'm going to give up. That's the thing is even though it's as if she sees Killer Croc as being the one and only person who can fill this void that she seems to need. And when he rejects her, she decides there is no one else. There's no other reason to carry on. We're going to make the world pay. Right. And you and I are going out together.
Right. Well, it is. I'm glad you point that out because it is suicide.
Yeah.
She's essentially saying this is our suicide.
Absolutely.
And I think that the writers who had this idea, I still am so surprised this turned into an episode.
What is uncomfortable? May I ask? Because a lot of people online...
We should talk about that.
What is uncomfortable for you?
Well, I was going to say, it's clear that the writers had the intention to tell us at the end of the episode, Baby Doll is the one who is so far gone and is, of the two, willing to end her life because she's so distant and disconnected to the world. And I think in their minds, they might have thought, we really want to show her, like, this is the crazy person in this whole episode. Whereas Killer Croc got caught up in this relationship. If you look back to how they got together, she saved him. So I wonder if he felt
Obligated.
trapped in this relationship. Like his life was saved, and so he's in this almost in this forced relationship, because if he were to get out of it, what if she did something to him?
Right. And she clearly invited herself into his sewer home. By the way, did you notice that the decor of the sewer home looked very nuclear family, very 1950s?
She was trying to recreate that.
She was recreating that.
Maybe
the
he
only
wanted
sense
nothing.
of family that she knows.
Yeah, he didn't want anything about that,
Right.
but I would even say that's abusive, that she manipulated him. She made him feel as though he had to be with her. Mm-hmm. However, yes, there is discomfort with this episode, because no matter how much you think or you remind yourself this is an adult woman in a child's body, you're seeing them interact, and she looks like a child.
Right.
And he...
But could I ask, and I get the sense that this is very uncomfortable for people. I had zero problem with their relationship. And I don't think it's... I think I have zero problem with their relationship because I view them both exactly how they want me to.
Right.
Even though she looks like a baby doll, she is not a child.
Right.
And she has made it very clear. And so to me, it would be like Emmanuel Lewis can't have a grown-up girlfriend because he's going to always be Webster. Or, of course Emmanuel Lewis grew up. He's just a small person. Like, to me, just because she looks like a tiny person, a tiny child, doesn't mean that she can't grow up. Now other people might have a problem with the fact that he is a reptile-looking
I don't
creature,
have a problem with that.
Whatever. But the two of them are both misunderstood people who could find love with one another,
Right.
and both deserve it. And I don't know that he's going to find another reptilian woman to hang out with. I don't have a problem with their adult relationship.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think that, again, we know that they are consenting adults,
Mm-hmm.
and that, furthermore, she has the intellectual capacity. So in thinking about, yes, she's 30 something. I don't know how old she is. She's an adult. She's in her 20s or 30s. So she's not a child. Right. She also clearly has the intellectual capacity of an adult.
Yeah.
So developmentally, and I guess physically, she's not... We're uncomfortable because she still looks like a child. And I think
she's acting like one.
Well, right. And I think, I think that's the intention.
Yeah.
I think what's great about this episode, and I say it's bizarre, and I say it's uncomfortable, and I say that I'm surprised that it got done, but the value of this episode is that, yes, we're feeling uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, we're unsure about how this is going to work. Even better, Batman makes a comment because he's kind of grossed out by this whole thing.
Let's play that.
What do you suppose they do on a date?
I don't want to think about it.
And I think this is a lesson for us. We don't like it, or at least to some level. We might be okay with it. You said you were fine with it. Factually, I don't have a problem with it. And yet, I think the intention is for this episode to kind of raise some issues for us. Why are we uncomfortable with this? Why are we judgmental? And I think at the end of the episode, we're supposed to come to some kind of, arrive at a lesson and understand that this is about, like you said, two people trying to make something work and trying to get their needs met. And we are doing the exact thing that society has been doing to them.
What's this we business? I'm the one who said I'm totally fine with it.
No, I mean we and the intended viewers.
Oh, I gotcha.
And when I say that I was uncomfortable, not in the sense that I didn't, not in the sense that I feel it should not have been done. Like, how dare they? Whatever.
Right.
I really admire it. I really like this episode in a way because it raises these issues and because we reflect on our judgments. And it's also very upsetting. The end of the episode is very disturbing, and it doesn't end. I mean, many of these episodes don't end in a happy way, but the ending is
like Batman said
sad.
In the last episode, sometimes there are no happy endings. Batman and Batgirl do end up saving the day. They shut down the nuclear power plant, and Killer Croc is disabled before he can kill anyone. Mm-hmm. And the heartbreaking moment is what Baby Doll says to him as she runs up to him at the end. His body lying on the floor, smoldering, and she cries. Let's take a listen.
You shouldn't have done it, Crocky. You shouldn't have made Baby angry. We could have been so happy and lived happily ever after, just like on TV.
Could I ask, recently you and I went to a yard sale of a friend. Mm-hmm. You acquired an in-box Killer Croc action figure with Baby Doll. Mm-hmm. How uncomfortable is it now, having seen the episode, to have that?
Well, I knew about the episode, and I believe I'd seen it long ago.
But known about their relationship? Because when we got that, I mean, I don't mean the fact that they became a romantic relationship. I knew you knew that.
Yeah.
But you remembered this episode, like you remembered that he treats her very badly.
No.
He nearly raises, like now knowing that you've got an action figure where the two of them were paired up, it's almost like you want to open it in order to just separate them. But they're sold as a couple.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. I see you staring at it right now.
It makes sense. Well, I'm trying to make out their expressions. Can you, your arm, you have the arm length to grab that box.
They pretty much exactly the expressions you would think. She's
happy.
Yeah, she's got a smile with the sort of devilish looking eyes, looking under her bangs, and he looks like Killer Croc.
Right.
It's basically it. But yeah, I was just curious. Overall, sounds like you really liked this episode.
I do. I think that people have a lot of mixed reactions. Like you said, some people don't like this episode or they're too uncomfortable by it. I think it has some value. And like many episodes that we enjoy, Batman doesn't really have a crucial part of this.
No.
He's barely in it.
That's what I love about the new Batman Adventures.
Right.
Is they have the least to do with Batman. I do have to wonder, though, we're sitting here sort of breaking down their relationship as if it was a negative thing. Do you think it was destined to be negative? Do you think that there was a point in time where the two of them might have gotten along or may have been able to trust one another?
Well, I think that fundamentally they did not trust one another.
Right.
I think that Killer Croc probably from the very beginning had a fairly healthy amount of distrust because why would this person save him?
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
She's very open about it. She says that she feels like the two of them are kindred spirits.
Right, but he's never had that kind of compassion before.
Right.
And then on her end...
What are you talking about? What about the people in the little cabin that was in the valley?
The circus?
The little circus people.
Yeah, they all screwed him.
No, they welcomed him. It wasn't until Batman rounded the corner and that he decided to screw them. But I see what you're saying.
So I looked up a few things about trust, and I know there's different types of trust. So specific to interpersonal trust between two individuals, there are some factors that are related to more or less trust between people. In the area of what's called dispositional research or dispositionally oriented work, that area of work or that area of research has revealed that individuals who are more insecurely attached have lower self-esteem or have more poorly differentiated self-concepts. Wow, that's a psych term. But meaning that their this is what we talked about. Baby doll self-concept.
Yeah.
It's not integrated. It's fragile. It's really fragmented, less diversified, not balanced, poorly tied together. That's what we mean by poorly differentiated self-concept. Those factors will lead to less trust between partnerships. And so when I think about Killer Croc and Baby Doll, the common elements lead them to not trust each other. Their common elements being that they both have poorly developed self-concepts, that they both have low self-esteem. They both are insecurely attached from the beginning and from other relationships. So they are almost destined to have low trust between each other.
I don't know how low his self-esteem is, though. He's got a poster of himself up on his own wall. It's sort of.
I like it.
Yeah,
and it's like Killer Croc
with a K.
It's
oh,
very cute.
But sometimes it's got a C, only a C. There's an animation mistake. Yeah, it kept bothering me. Occasionally, yeah, it's got a CROCK, and then occasionally it's just CROC.
I'm not just competent, I'm as good as it gets.
I'm not just competent. I'm as good as it gets!
I still think he has low self-esteem. I think he's overcompensating.
Okay.
And I think that there's some evidence that he has low self-esteem. Nonetheless, from the very beginning, they seem to have poor trust. And I think that may have led to the disruption of their relationship. The other thing about trust is that trust is typically higher when the individuals in a relationship believe the other partner is more committed to the relationship and has benevolent intentions and motivations. And we know that Baby Doll doesn't seem to think this about Killer Croc throughout the episode. When she discovers or when he tells her he's going away, he's leaving the house or the sewers, and doesn't tell her why, that really does decrease the trust between them, of course. And when we talk about trust, we lead into cooperation, because in order to have cooperation, you have to trust the other person. And this led me to start thinking about the prisoner's dilemma.
Ooh.
Now, you probably know about the prisoner's dilemma.
I do.
The best way to describe the prisoner's dilemma is to think of two criminals that were captured and were interrogated or interviewed separately by the cops. And by the way, the prisoner's dilemma is a theoretical game or a theoretical idea that has been around for over 50 years and was essentially used to help people understand motivations and decision making when it comes to either cooperating with each other or defecting. The prisoner's dilemma is basically, or comes down to, the decision making by those two people. And if you think of a graph or a grid, and let's say person A and person B, and the theoretical idea that they're being interviewed, each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of communicating with the other. The prosecutors lack sufficient evidence to convict the pair on the principal charge. They hope to get both sentenced to a year in prison on a lesser charge. So simultaneously, the prosecutors offer each prisoner a bargain. Each prisoner is given the opportunity either to betray the other by testifying that the other committed the crime, or to cooperate with the other by remaining silent. So if they both remain silent, they're cooperating.
Okay.
It means that they'll probably both be convicted of the minor crime.
Mm-hmm.
If A and B betray the other, each of them serves 2 years in prison. If A betrays B, but B remains silent, A will be set free and B will serve 3 years in prison, and vice versa. So if you betray the other person and they don't betray you, they stay silent, you actually win out, right? You're set free.
Right.
And they get more years in prison.
Right.
So there is, of course, your decision impacts the outcome, but it's the combined decision that impacts the outcome ultimately. So it's implied that the prisoners will have no opportunity to reward or punish their partner other than the prison sentences that they get, and that their decision will not affect the reputation in the future. So in other words, this is a one-time scenario.
Yeah.
At least in the original scenario of the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, so what's interesting about this is not much. The prisoner's dilemma is meant to be very theoretical and is a one-time interaction. That doesn't really give us a lot of information about the episode we're covering. What I was interested in was what's called an iterative example of the prisoner's dilemma. So what if these two people are in a relationship, whether a criminal relationship where they're in a gang together, or in an emotional or interpersonal relationship, so that when they cooperate, they both benefit. But when one person betrays the other person could potentially be punished or could have a negative outcome, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some interesting studies and even some computer models that go into iterative prisoner's dilemma games and demonstrate that over time, if you have repeated prisoner's dilemmas or prisoner's dilemma situations in which the combined decision making has an effect or an outcome, that cooperative interactions end up giving the most payoff, so to speak. So over time, and these computer models have like over 200 iterative scenarios where they literally plug them into a formula, and scientists have kind of looked at all the different types of combinations and ways that this could work, from constant betrayal to constant cooperation to what's called tit for tat. So if you do something, I do the same thing, and they realized that a cooperative relationship would have the best payoff for both people.
Right.
And so this has, I think, some relevance to this kind of relationship that Killer Croc and Baby Doll have, because they're sort of testing each other out and trying to cooperate, but ultimately they're betraying each other. And I think that had they had more opportunities to work closely together, would they have continued to commit crimes? Probably, but I think that the success would have been their relationship and bond, their ability to have maybe a healthy relationship, or as good as they can be in terms of what might be healthy for them.
Yeah. Look at you bringing the knowledge. Wow. What a great episode. Lots to break down. I feel like we could talk about it even longer, but at the same time, I think we've done a really good job breaking this episode down.
Yeah. What did you think? What are your overall impressions? You loved it.
I love this episode. I think it's great. I think it's a great episode. I think it's because I feel for both of them.
I feel like at the end of it, here's what I think. I think that Baby Doll is more animal than Killer Croc.
We're gonna break this down. We want to hear from everybody out there on Twitter and on Facebook. This isn't necessarily a poll situation, but we want to hear your thoughts. Is Baby Doll more monster than Killer Croc in this episode? Are either of them more monster than, say, Batman in this episode? Do you think that Bruce Wayne could have done some good if he had just done a little bit more community outreach with Baby Doll? Maybe if she'd been doing celebrity appearances for Bruce Wayne, at conventions, and she'd been doing signings of some kind, maybe she would have an opportunity to see her fans rather than people who just expected her to dance and be funny and, whatever, be cute. I think she could have embraced this a little bit more. Ultimately, I think this is all Bruce Wayne's fault, as always. So, Drea, before we give them the opportunity to answer, what do you think?
Beauty and the Beast.
In this case, Baby Doll is the Beast, you
yeah.
think. All right,
yeah.
Got it. So we want to hear what you think. Drea, where can folks come to you online and tell you what they think?
Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc, Instagram if you have visuals, there's no at, Instagram, just Arkham.
Yeah, there's an ad on Instagram. Yeah.
Well, technically, yes, you can tag someone at Arkham Asylum Doc, website underthemaskonline.com.
And you can find me. I am at bward028 on Twitter. On Instagram, I am at b_ward028. You can find us both on Twitter. We are at Arkham Sessions, and Arkham Sessions has an Instagram account now, and you'll be seeing a lot more cool stuff being posted up there that you won't be seeing on Twitter or on Facebook. And that is at the Arkham Sessions on Instagram. Come like us on Facebook and go visit our family over at Fanbase Press on Twitter. You can find them. They are at fanbase_press. Go to fanbasepress.com to get our upcoming schedules for Comic-Con. When that goes up, you can also take a look at their comics. You can take a listen to their other podcasts. They got some fantastic stuff up there. Drea, until next week, let's tell the folks who we are. I am Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And together we are
the Arkham Sessions.
Ordinarily, I don't approve of spanking. But in her case...